and now we are recording. So as you know, if you come any ideas come to you as I'm presenting and you feel shy about talking, you can always type in the chat box. I get all the comments that come in, and then I can process the questions or follow up. As you know, this is a joint project between Community Design Group, which is my firm, and then we're supported by WSB, who's providing some key services for feasibility. Today is kind of in some ways, it shouldn't have to be a very long agenda, but we're going to talk a little bit about River City Days, which was fantastic. Then we'll talk about the next engagement activities for community engagement. And then we'll go into the plan document a little bit and go through an outline and talk about programs, which are a key component of our approach and also need to be described in the plan itself. So we'll go a little bit more into that. But to start, maybe let's chat about community engagement. And it's always important, I think, as we're doing this work together, you and I, to acknowledge that, we've done already quite a bit of community engagement work using the online platforms that we had to rely on because of COVID. Our goal was to have 1,000 residents participating, and we have exceeded that actually. So that is pretty good result for the community effort. We've had over 1,000 people participating, but we also know that we didn't reach all of the different communities that live in and enjoy living in Chaska, and so we've wanted to expand it to make sure that we reach all segments of the population. One of the ways that we've thought is a great way of doing it is by doing in-person events. River City Days was a fantastic event. We had a booth for the pedestrian and bicycle plan coordinated. Marshall, thank you very much for doing the coordination to get us there and for bringing out the materials and also having us next to the city. We had between 150 and 200 people come by and interact with the booth, ask questions, make comments, and also it was great because we were right next to the overall City of Chaska booth as well. So people that were asking questions there also stopped by and asked questions in our booth, and we were able to collect information using maps, using dot boards. Here's just a kind of a quick sample. So this is one of the boards that we had out. What will make it easier and more convenient to walk or ride a bike. In this case, wayfinding was really key. You can see it here. Maintenance during winter, and of course having the network of sidewalks. In addition to many other ideas that people contributed, like for example, having restrooms or different elements, because people were able to also write down specific ideas. We also asked, what keeps you from walking or riding more? And I think this board was only out one day, but still there is some interesting information about streets feeling hard to cross or feeling unsafe at intersections. We had also a map, a full-size map that we worked with people to get their comments and to note them in the map about places that they recommend for a route, or a place where a route exists, but there is some issue with it. You can see that the recommendations get pretty detailed, and in this case, around the area of the downtown. And there's also a number of comments that we wrote down working with people who visited us. So with that, I'd like to open it up. This is a question that Taylor brought up. It was great. I wonder if you have other thoughts, anyone that you'd like to share regarding the event, and please feel free to join in. Anyone?
So sorry, my son is on a bike actually right outside here.
Oh, good,
So
good.
I was a little bit distracted. Yeah, to kind of expand on what I had briefly mentioned, it was a lot of really good engagement in regards to the bike booth. I worked both booths, and I will say that I actually got a lot more city questions at the bicycle master plan booth than I did at the official city one, which was totally fine, and it was good. People were just very, very excited. Lot of really great feedback and use of the new trail connection on the bridge, kind of by Lake Grace. I think one of the things that stood out was just completing Lake Grace, kind of the trail, kind of having it be like a loop, which is obviously marked on the notes and everything. But I just think people were overall very engaged, even if they weren't from Chaska. They still use the trails. You know, we had neighboring community members, and they were very excited that we were taking the time to kind of make these connections. I think the bigger point is some of those neighboring community members really wanting everything to really connect. We had a woman whose daughter, she's in middle school, and her daughter they live in Carver, and her daughter wants to be able to bike ride all the way from Carver all the way over to I think it was middle school east, or no, middle school west, I can't remember. Anyways, it was one of the two in that general vicinity, and it was like, you know, looking at the map and trying to figure out, you know, what could she do or what could be done, but they were extremely excited. So that would be my feedback.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Taylor. Thanks for all your support with the booth. That was wonderful.
Yeah, and I would also say that you know, for River City Days, where, you know, it's a lot of pretty quick movement, quick giveaways, and, you know, people are kind of on their way somewhere, and then to have a booth where you really had to take the time or really want to engage with it, because it wasn't a quick explanation as to kind of what the pieces there were. I was actually pleasantly surprised by how many people actually stopped and stayed, and then actually, you know, had some pretty in-depth conversations about, you know, what they liked, what they didn't like about the trails. And then even, I'd say a lot of people stopped and looked at the map and tried to find where they lived, and then tried to see where the trails were around their house. So I thought that was probably the biggest piece of engagement that booth had. And again, it was just pleasantly surprising that many people actually just kind of stopped and engaged, because if you don't have a free thing you're giving away, usually they're on their way.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I was super excited about the amount of people that stopped by and wanted to learn more, ask questions, and provide feedback. Overall, just tons of compliments about our existing trail system, which is always great to hear. And I think for those folks, seeing that we're trying to make it even better, what was pretty exciting to them. The map was definitely the biggest engagement, and I had a lot of people asking, where do I get this map? And so I think maps in general are going to be a big goal coming out of this work. And then I would say one of the neatest ideas that came out of it, thinking ahead into the future with, you know, the advent of all the e-bikes and implementing charging stations at our parks, was an idea that somebody had that I thought was pretty neat for us to consider.
That is a pretty wonderful idea, and I think that's wonderful that we're hearing it from community members.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to second something that you mentioned, Marshall, and which to me was really just amazing and really ought to be very gratifying for you as residents of Chaska and as staff at the city of Chaska who are here in this meeting, just how much people love what Chaska has built, how much people use it, how much they appreciate it. how grateful they are for what you have and provide, in terms of these bicycle infrastructure, these wonderful trails that are all over the community. And so I think that's one of those things, take a minute and give yourself a pat in the back, because that's been a lot of, for a long time, you've been working on it, and you've been making investments, and you've been dedicating resources to making this happen. And people can see it and they appreciate it. And it's one of the reasons why you have a high quality of life in your community. So I think that's just something to always keep in mind. It's a huge asset. And it may be that because you live in Chaska and this is what you hear, maybe all of the time, you may think, well, this is just what people would say in any other community. And that's not the case, because not any other community has what you have today, which is huge and just a fantastic foundation for next steps. So congratulations. All right. Anybody else want to share any more comments? Otherwise, we'll return to the presentation.
Yeah, I would just agree with everybody that the comments and questions and feedback were great. I thought they were just awesome. People were really engaged, really concerned, and also touting the trails that we do have, loving what we have already.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bob.
Mhm.
All right, I'm gonna back to sharing my screen. So just briefly to chat about next engagement. We have, because River City Days was so successful, we had discussed with you, and we had discussed internally as well with the project management team, that the next engagement would be in the form of listening sessions rather than pop-up events. Because what we want to do is we want to go and connect with communities that we haven't connected with. And so we had thought we would have 2 pop-up events and 2 listening sessions. What we're going to be doing is having the 1 pop-up event, or the festival event, which we had at River City Days, and then 3 listening sessions. And based on the voting that you all provided as a steering committee, these are the top 3 vote getters. And I'll be coordinating with Marshall this week to figure out how we move ahead with kind of setting up those meetings where we go to them, we go to their organization, and we sit with them and ask them questions or listen to what they think. So we're going to be doing that planning starting this week, and we'll hopefully implement at least a couple of the listening sessions by the time we all meet again. I don't know if you have any questions about that at this point, or about next steps.
Just one thing to note on that, Antonio, and just so everybody's aware, we might need to reconsider how we're engaging the Latino community, because my understanding is the Riverview Terrace soccer program, I think, is completed for the summer. But I think there's going to be some other options for us there to consider. So
I think Julie also has some fishing events coming up.
Oh, that'd be another good one. Fishing with friends.
Yeah, I think so. I think Julie was just talking about that this morning.
That's our wonderful options. So we'll follow up, and when Marshall and I chat and kind of plan out what we do, just know that we'll be trying. If you see any difference from what's in this little box here on the screen, it'll be because we had to, because like he said, if the Riverview program is not active, then we'll move to the next options that are in the list.
Yep, so we just finished our soccer program is done. I have 3 fishing trips with the youth next week. I have 2 on Monday and 1 on Wednesday. But basically it's the kids, I meet them at the RCC, I pick them up in the bus, I take them fishing, and then I bring them back. So it's not really parent involvement down there.
we did the Parks and Rec event down there like a week or so ago with Aaron that was down there, and we did that with families. But, we could send something out maybe through the RCC has a program that there's a lot of youth that go down there for help that we could maybe connect. Or I know Dustin, if we wanted to send out something to the community, we could send out something if we had it in English and Spanish. So I'm not sure, but we could work on something. So to connect down there.
That's wonderful.
So,
thank you so much. So
Yep.
we'll follow up. I'll follow up with Marshall, and we'll be in contact and kind of figure out those next options. Thank you, Julie. All right. Any other comments or questions about that engagement? Then we'll then get started to talk a little bit about the second half of our agenda, which has to do with the plan document itself. So I want to first chat with you about the organization of the plan document. And what you see on the screen right now is just, it's a temporary cover for the document. We've been assembling an outline of it. It's in a rough and early draft view, but we have an outline of how it's going to be. But I just to show you a little bit, so it's a landscape format. So it's 8.5 by 11 on a landscape, which is easier for people to be able to read online or on their computer, which is the way that we're going to be distributing it. It works great for tablets. It'll work great for the screen. We have here our acknowledgements page, and you can see a little bit of the colors and type choices, kind of the organization of each of the pages. Each section gets introduced with an image, and this is so this is the first section of the plan, introduction and approach. You can see we have a footer, we have this image filling up the page, and I should say thank you for the images. This is one of the images, for example, that someone submitted through that cloud drive that we had shared. So the images that you do share with us, just know that we're going to put them in the plan, and it'll make the plan feel like a Chaska plan, because it will look like Chaska. It will have images of Chaska. And so just keep that in mind too. If you're out riding and you see something that you like or that you don't like, something that you'd like to share and illustrate, add that image to that SharePoint folder, and we'll be able to add it. And then of course, if you tell us, if we have a name associated with each image, we'll credit your name if you would like to, etc. But so this is kind of generally how we introduce a section, and then we go into the content of each section. But what is the content of the plan? How is it organized? Well, it's organized in three main parts. The first part of the plan is an introduction and background. So it talks a little bit about, for example, previous studies that may have been done. Where is Chaska? What are the main transportation corridors? What's the population of Chaska like? So just general background related to the plan. The second section has to do with the actual recommendations, that what the plan is recommending. What is the type of infrastructure? What is the network like? And what are you notice that it says 6 E's, what programs are we recommending? And then there's an appendix, which is the third section, which is we're going to put in, for example, the toolbox, the community engagement reports for the engagement activities we have completed. So those are basically three parts. And then each of those parts, as I mentioned, this introduction and background, it'll include this part, a summary of the guidance that we have received from the public. So it'll, a high level summary of what we did and what we learned. We'll talk about those existing conditions, and we'll talk about, the framework for how it is that we're going to, what the recommendations are based on. So that's the first section. The 6 E's is, as the name says it, it's based on 6 E's. So each of the E's gets a chapter. So each one of these, I mentioned in the orange, those are sections. In the blue, each one of those is a chapter of that section. So we have 6 chapters related to each one of the E's, and each one of them has an existing conditions and then a set of recommendations related to them. And then from those 6 E's, we develop another chapter, which is implementation related, funding resources, implementation priorities, etc. And then the appendices, as I mentioned, has the reports of engagement, any applicable ordinances that may be relevant for the plan, and the toolbox of treatments. So now we're going to talk in a little bit more detail about this central key part of the plan, the recommendations, and I'm going to go through kind of taking the next step in and zooming in on those chapters, just to give you an idea of what's included in each chapter. So, the approach is, and you've said this to us, you made that clear in your request for proposals, and we've said it to you as well, that, this is a 6 E's plan, and we're approaching it, thinking of all of those E's, and we're going to have information and guidance on each one of those E's. So for engineering, here's another one of the images that you've shared with us, for example. Engineering, which has to do with facilities and the network. This chapter is going to include an approach and an overview of how we're making recommendations. So it's framework idea, but then we have recommendations for your pedestrian network, recommendations for the bicycle network, and then we have other elements related to how do we integrate with transit. We think about bike share. We are going to be having some recommendations for mobility hubs in your community. We'll have wayfinding as well, and I know some time ago, Marshall shared with me some of the previous wayfinding work you have done, which is fantastic. And so that is going to inform, or is informing, I should say, the wayfinding chapter, or the wayfinding recommendations in the engineering chapter. We'll talk about maintenance and kind of winter maintenance and summertime maintenance. We'll talk about parking, and then we'll also have some general city planning recommendations related to, for example, what we might otherwise call transit-oriented development, or kind of compact development, walkable urbanism, reviews that you might want to put in place when new development is built, so that it's more pedestrian-oriented, etc. So that's the engineering chapter. The education chapter of the 6 E's section, it's going to include, well, first of all, what is the city of Chaska doing currently? So we're going to put that information in here. And that's one of the reasons why we've asked you for that. We want to know what's going on today so that we can make recommendations based on what exists. We'll have some ideas for how we communicate the city's network and facilities. And as Marshall said, something that everybody's clamoring for is maps. So that's one set of tools. Instructions or education on how to use the system. How do we safely share space? We'll have some information on safe routes to school and some work that has been done in the community already. The next chapter is about encouragement. Again, another image. This is from the Cycle Chaska event that you had in May of this year. So thanks for sharing those photographs. For encouragement, we'll talk about, again, what is currently existing. Cycle Chaska, for example, is one of the events that we'll list. This happens every year. We'll write in there. And we'll also talk about, other events like open streets and other community events. We'll talk about some incentive programs, for example, for walking and biking And we'll talk about some of the accomplishments that the city has as a way also of encouraging people to kind of try the system. And so there's a number of components or sections within this chapter. Then we move to enforcement, and it's the same model again of first we start with what currently exists, what enforcement practices are geared towards the needs of people walking or biking. And then we'll talk we'll have a section talking about overall system safety and user safety, methods for safety enforcement related to walking and biking, ideas like progressive ticketing. And then of course, we'll have information on adjusting speed limits, because that's a very powerful tool as well to make conditions safer for people walking and biking. So this is the enforcement section. The next section has to do with evaluation and measurement. And this section, I should say, this chapter includes the following. What current evaluation efforts is the city making today? What programs do you have in place related to evaluation and measurement? We'll also talk then about generally what are some measures that one might use to evaluate walking and biking. So this is like, for example, what things do we count users, but we also can count and need to count safety. For example, number of crashes affecting pedestrians or bicyclists, or perception of safety. So we'll have a discussion on all of that as part of the counting program as well. We'll have a little bit more detail on that. And then we will set some goals for evaluating progress. Now, these are, so we're going to set targets, because that's one of the ways in which, it's one of the reasons why a 6Es plan is an effective plan for our community. And to have it really be a 6Es plan, we have to set targets for what it is that we want to do. We want to increase walking by 5% over the next 3 years, let's say. We'll set those targets and we'll put them in the plan. And so at the next time that we meet, which will be in September, we are going to discuss those targets with you. And we will then set them and put them in the plan. We'll also be discussing them with the project management team at the city, because we of course want to make sure that everything meshes together well. So, but this is coming. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be working with you to set up those goals and to discuss them. The last chapter in the 6Es section has to do with equity. And again, we want to know what current initiatives and efforts are in place right now in the city. And then we'll have different discussion items related to how do we help to increase, we'll have recommendations for increasing equitable participation. We'll have recommendations for implementing some of those improvements related to the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we'll talk about how to connect with or what some needs might be with disparity populations in the community. So with that, I am going to take a little break to ask you, what do you think about this outline? Does it make sense to you? Do you feel like it's reasonable? Do you think it'll be useful? What do you think? Any thoughts? Or comments? What is missing? Are there things there that are missing? Or do you feel like it's got too many items? Do you feel like it seems good as it is for a first draft? What do you think?
Well, hi, this is Pat. I would just comment that I like the way it continues to follow the 6Es and to lay out what this group has learned throughout this process in terms of the current state of the environment, the physical environment and otherwise in Chaska. and therefore the recommendations for improving each of the 6 Cs. I think it's laid out very logical and will be a very comprehensive report. So I like it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Pat. Anybody else? All right. Not hearing any other comments, then I might return us to the presentation. Anybody else? Last chance? No?
I do have one maybe
Oh.
question, Antonio, just for the group to maybe better understand. As you know, like as we talk about the engineering component, obviously will, I'm assuming, include a lot of projects with price tags attached to them.
Yes, we'll identify some projects and the price tags will be in the implementation side. But yes.
In the input, yep.
And this will be their planning level estimates, they're rough estimates. They're not going to be very detailed, but they'll give us enough to give you an idea of how much it might be to implement them. Yes.
Okay. And will those be organized in some fashion of like priority or based on
Yes.
cost or?
In terms of priority. So that's part of
Okay.
the implementation matrix, a set
Okay.
of implementation goals that we'll have for the plan.
All right.
That's a great question. Thank you.
Good to know. Yeah, because obviously, you know, like you and I have talked about, the key here is the implementation. And so having it organized in a fashion that, you know, I'll be able to work through and with the park board and city council over time to implement the recommendations, I think is going to be key.
I agree. I think that's the place where things can really shine, is get the implementation going. Now, I would like to, you know, make an additional comment related to implementation. And I know that it's really key for us to chat about, you know, like the estimates and the selection of routes for implementation. But something that I'd like to emphasize as well, you know, here among all of us, and so that we remember it, is that so infrastructure and engineering is a key E. We need facilities, but we also can achieve almost the same results through programming, which is something that most times, you know, we may overlook or we're not so familiar with, because oftentimes programs are not implemented. But what we can do very inexpensively and very quickly through programs is amazing. By providing maps, for example, or by having events that invite people to try walking or biking, or providing incentives for people to walk or bike more often, and maybe giving them discounts to specific, you know, there are all kinds of programs that in the case of, for example, routes to school, you know, having crossing guards, it's a minimal expense, but it makes a huge difference in trying to get across a roadway that to reconfigure might take years and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you can, you know, you can deploy crossing guards, you know, the next day in a way. So so that's something that the plan will work to communicate as well. So, and you know, we want to make sure that we orient the infrastructure recommendations to be realistic and achievable, but we also want to make sure that we don't forget about programs, because generally it is something that most communities forget to do. And it's really where a huge gain can happen incredibly quickly and really build the constituency that is going to then rally around and support those expensive investments that take longer time. So just you'll see that in the plan in different places, because that's something that we want to make sure to contribute to your community and through that. Any other thoughts or comments or questions related to the outline or to what we just have been talking about? I will then move us on back to the presentation for the last comments I wanted to share with you. Just one quick minute here. So I now want to share back to you the information that that we collected from you. So first of all, I'm very grateful for everybody going through and contributing ideas and things that they knew about programs that are going on in the city today. So I'm just going to quickly highlight this. There is a link to a worksheet with this same information, so you can review it later if you would like. It's on the agenda, that link. So this is what we received for education. And now we're all familiar with what education initiatives are. This is what, so these are tools to be able to use the system that exists more easily or more safely. So these are things that people wrote back in those forms that we shared. So we have a trail map available. We have the Chaska police, when they're placing social media posts, they include rules of the road. So that's fantastic. The booth at River City Days also help to share information about biking and walking in the city. So that's another potential education initiative. There are classes for adults and young people to learn how to mountain bike. So those are I should say, all of the education initiatives that we receive. And lastly, showing kids how to wear helmets safely and properly. So things for the Chaska police, and then a bicycle rodeo on Fridays as part of this series. I'm not familiar with it, but we'll do some additional digging about the information. But anyway, so this is what all that we've received related to education happening in the city of Chaska today. So and this is a question that you'll see on the other ones. Do you know of any other initiatives related to education that are happening now? If you do, you can mention it right now. Feel free to jump in or just type it in the chat box if you feel shy or just want to quickly type it. So anybody have any thoughts or other education initiatives, knowledge of other education initiatives? Okay.
Well, the League of American Cyclists puts on a bike safety classes. And I believe they're free, put on by Minnesota Bicycle Alliance. They're great educational classes.
Are they occurring in the city currently? Do you know?
Currently, no.
Okay. So we want to point that out as an option there, but it's not currently. This is not currently happening. Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other education initiatives?
My selfish one is teaching young children how to ride their bikes with, and maybe even getting off training wheels for parents that try really hard, but their children maybe will learn better from another adult.
Mm-hmm. And a question, is that something that you do on your own, or is that through an organized group?
Oh, I don't know. It's a personal problem over here.
Taylor, send your little one over to me.
I can get big wheels, I can get scooters, I can get a whole lot of things, but the bike, and he can do the tag along behind me. But for him on his own, it's tough. And so it'd be nice to have it, because I kind of think about I took him to Fishing with Friends. It's an organization where they learn how to fish, and he was so much more receptive to learning from other people for something like that.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's nice for kids to kind of engage with other adults, so
Yeah.
they tend to like listen and everything like that. Not that he's not a listener, but I don't know. It's selfish, but I'm sure I'm not the only one in this position.
Yeah,
So
no, and that might be a good program to try to start up. I agree. Um, um, but there's not anything like that that occurs right now in the city. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think Taylor is suggesting that as a recommendation in the plan.
Yes, I think we can put it in there. Very good. Very good. So I'll move us to the next slide to give you, the kind of what we received related to encouragement. So the Cycle Chaska event, a wonderful encouragement event. There is apparently a bike to work event that happens in the city that's kind of officially supported. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And that's happens citywide, and the city does marketing for it and so on.
City and county, yep.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Pre-COVID,
Right, right.
but we'll resume it.
Wonderful. I'm making a note, just confirming that. A Tour de Tonka, which I guess travels through Chaska, is that true?
Yes, it does.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then there are some rides that are sponsored and organized by Michael Cycles, so we've put that there. Any others that you know of that are currently existing events to encourage people to walk or bike? Okay, it doesn't sound like there is.
Well, there's the walking events that our AOA group does. So our active older adults do like walks in the park.
Thank you, Kevin. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
I don't know if we want to account for running too, but obviously there's some.
That is interesting. Do
Run
you have
clubs.
a running clubs, and is there like an umbrella organization that's organizing them, or?
Through our community center, we have a run club.
Oh, okay.
And then another item that's kind of hot off the press that we just coordinated with our fitness supervisor is we'll be implementing it's called the Park Run program in Chaska. So it's a weekly timed 5K that is available to walkers and runners. That's going to be starting on September 18th. But that's a national organization. There's like 1,500 park runs that occur across the world every Saturday.
Huh.
And I think we're the second site in Minnesota.
Well, that's great. Very nice. Thanks for letting me know about that.
I don't know if this is only related to just public events, but obviously not obviously, but the city of Chaska, we also have a like stop the clock for employees. It's part of our wellness committee. So most of the time that's kind of has to, there's an option to go like walk around the lake, or there's areas where you can walk.
That's great. That's great. And, and I should mention too, one of the goals for the plan is, of course, to develop your network and get more people walking and bicycling in the city more often. But it also is to kind of qualify for the next level of consideration as a bicycle-friendly community. And one of the ways in which we can gain that designation is by showing, and this is part of the usefulness of this section in your plan, is that we will highlight in one single place all of the work that's being done and is being supported by the community and by the city towards walking and biking. So it'll raise your scoring with the League of American Bicyclists when they're doing the bicycle friendly community scoring higher. So I think that event stopped the clock. I think that's wonderful, and it shows community support and city support for walking. So that's great.
I think too, Antonio, I know Scott Barta's not on representing the school district and community ed, but I'll try to reach out to him to gather what types of things related around education and encouragement that the school is doing, because I would imagine they got to be doing some things around that.
Yes, and it would be really helpful to have that information. I imagine that walk or bike to school day is something that is supported. But of course, I mean, I don't know for a fact, but that would be wonderful to have that confirmation from him.
Yep.
Thank you, Marshall. I'm gonna, the next one has to do with enforcement. And this is again, making sure that laws are enforced for the safety and well-being of people walking and biking and all users of the road, really. And so this is something that Chaska Police Department, we were told, does, is handing out ice cream coupons for kids wearing helmets. So it's a kind of a positive reinforcement for kids. So that's one of the initiatives. And that's the only one that we have received. So I don't know if there is targeted enforcement around the schools, for example, during some communities during the fall and during the spring, they do targeted speed enforcement. I don't know if there is, intentional location of speed monitors in specific places in the community, things like that, that may be initiatives that the Chaska Police Department has done.
We do
related
have-
to enforcement. That would be very helpful for this set of summaries.
We do have two, I guess, speed radar monitors, whatever you want to call them, on Highway 61. So on either side of Highway 41, coming into town, there's kind of one of those speed signs that flashes pretty bright. And then I don't know all the details on this, but I think there's also something the police department just got that may be able to be used like as a mobile thing, but I don't know enough about that. I just heard that secondhand, so I'd have to confirm that.
All right, no, that's very helpful. And so we'll have this information in that draft plan that you all review, and you can, once you have the draft in front of you, you can add additional information. I'm trying to collect as much as I can right now so that we can really fill it in. But we can continue to do those improvements as we move forward as well.
The other thing the PD is doing right now is we're actually doing bike patrol. So we have officers that are now riding bikes and doing bike patrol for community engagements in the community also. So they have uniforms with bright yellow shirts, and they are out and about on different shifts for community engagement on bicycles. So that's kind of cool too. And we were working, yeah, it's very cool. So when we were working, we have 4 bikes. So we were working on getting a speed wagon, is what Kevin was talking about. So I'm not sure if that's in or not. And that was just for speed enforcement to put at various neighborhoods or places. So anyway.
Thank you. That's very useful information. Thank you so much.
One thing I'd like to add as far as the enforcement goes, I know by that crosswalk by the beach there, I cringe every time I go through there because I see people not really paying attention. And there's plenty of signage there. There's a flashing light, but it does get scary crossing that. I just pray every time I have to cross it.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, I'm looking at the clock. We have about a couple of minutes left. I just have a couple more of these to go through. For evaluation, we have, there is, according to the information we received from all of you in the steering committee, there is no evaluation program going on right now. There are no counts to know how many people are using a trail. There is no program, and there are no goals that are set for increases that you want to see for your investments in walking and biking. Is that true?
Hey, Marshall and Pat, maybe, and this isn't, I guess, currently ongoing, but wasn't there something that was done for the wayfinding? I seem to remember a consultant being out on the trails and kind of like counting how many people were using a certain trail. Or am I?
Yep, you're correct. Yeah, we did that wayfinding pilot
Got it. That's what it was.
study
Okay.
a couple of years ago. So I mean, I think that's an example of evaluation to get some feedback on what we should be putting on our signage. But as we sit here today, there's really no ongoing evaluation programming in terms of counting. So
Okay.
I see that as one of our bigger opportunities going forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a really important one, especially to, in a way, to justify, necessary future investments. You can always say, we have X number of people, and after making this investment now, it has grown by 10%. Let's make the other investment that we need to. So yeah, this is it's a great area of opportunity for the city.
Yep.
The last E, equity. We have these programs, led by Chaska Police about making sure that kids have access to bikes. Then the new underpass, and I think this is the one kind of towards the middle of the city, so that this helps children connect to school or to Target more safely. Bike giveaways through Chaska Cares. Any others that you're aware of?
I would also add in the PD bike sale. Every year Julie organizes a bike sale from the bikes that are not collected, or nobody comes to claim them. So the bikes are usually sold for about $15 to $20. So it's a very affordable price for a lot of people to get a bike.
Yeah.
And the ones that don't get purchased go to, and Julie can correct me because I'm going to get this wrong, but somewhere a bike shop, I think in Eden Prairie, that they then fix them up and then also then donate them back into the community somehow.
Wonderful. That sounds great. And if you know or think of others, just let me know. I want to, so we're about 2 minutes over time right now. I just want to quickly talk about next steps. Where one of the items that we had for today, but I thought that we wouldn't have time, was to just kind of review and discuss vision. So I'll follow that up as we've talked about a kind of homework assignment. So I'll share that with you, and we'll move forward with that. I mentioned the photographs. Everybody has been wonderful providing photos. If you run into some more photos or other items that you'd like to share, now you see how they're going to be used. Please use the SharePoint, and I'll send an email with that information. And then the homework for us is to get a draft plan to you by the end of August. So we're still working there. We are moving forward. There's a lot of content to develop, but we're gonna get there. So anyway, with that, I open it up for questions. And if you have any comments or need any more information, please let me know. We are 2 minutes behind schedule, so I apologize for that. Any comments? Any questions? Anyone? No?
Well, Antonio, I just say that the plan seems to continue to be progressing very, very nicely. Good work.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Thank you. Thank you. We're excited to be working with you on this plan. I think it's going to be a useful and important plan for your community, and we're just wonderfully happy to be part of it with you. So thank you. Well, any final comments from anyone before we adjourn then? All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.